In years gone by, things were different. You used to see reptiles that had no business being in pet stores in every pet store. And the 2000s was no different. So today let's go over what happened to all these 2000s reptiles that you don't see anymore. My name's Adam, this is Diamond, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. I was born in the 90s, so for me, my adolescence and teenage years were in the 2000s. This is when I would go with my friends to pet stores, or the early part of the decade, my parents would take me to pet stores, and I remember a lot. And what I remember when I think about it is crazy, because some of the reptiles you would see had no business being available to the general public. So let's just start it off with one that I saw all the time, and I really thought was gonna be my first reptile because they were so available and so cheap. Number 5, Greengnolls. Don't bite my ear, Diamond, please. Let's be professional today. It's Friday. Let's have a good end to the week. Happy Monday to you. Greengnolls are small and they're short-lived and they're arboreal and they don't really like to be handled, but they're beautiful. And the males have a really cool little dew-flap thingy, then they head bob, and overall, anoles are really cool. But back in the 2000s, we didn't really know much about how to take care of them properly, because I remember walking to a PetSmart and the guy told me to put them in a 5-gallon enclosure that wasn't very tall with no extra lighting and put a couple sticks in there and a water bowl, and that's it. That's not how you take care of an anole. Anoles, they need a tropical environment. They need it to be humid, they need it to be warm, they need UVB lighting, they need insects that are dusted properly with vitamins and supplements. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that these aren't as popular, or at least when they are, you know a little bit more about how to set them up and take care of them. And we have the internet now, it's much more prevalent. In say 2002 or 2003, there wasn't, well, Facebook wasn't a thing yet. Forums were in their infancy, so it wasn't as easy now as it is to get information. And don't get me wrong, you still see anoles available and they're still really cheap, like 15 bucks or less in Canada, if it's the States. Like 7 or 8, 10 bucks maybe, but they're not as common and they're not touted as a really good beginner reptile. They could be, but they're display reptiles, so they're not something that you'd want to get. If you want to get something similar in terms of size, maybe a little bit bigger, that need an arboreal enclosure, very similar type of care, but you can handle, there's other options. Things like emerald tree skinks. So I just think that now we know a little bit more, and it makes more sense to have different options, and people are gonna know what they're getting themselves into, where when I was a little kid and I went into these pet stores, if I took that animal home and took care of it exactly how I was told, it would be dead within a week. And that used to be pretty common. Cheap reptiles would just be kind of almost given to whoever, because it's cheap, who cares if it dies? But it's a life. Doesn't matter if it's free. It's still a life. Number 4, let's just ruin it with an amphibian real quick. Red-eye tree frogs. These are still pretty common, but not so much in like PetSmarts and things like that. Red-eye tree frogs aren't even that difficult to care for, but again, I looked at these because I wanted to put anoles with red-eye tree frogs. I've always wanted to do this, and I was told at this PetSmart, I remember it vividly, yeah, you can do that, you know, just make it a little bit bigger of an enclosure. Like maybe 10 or 15 gallons and still like horizontal instead of upright. Yeah, I remember this so vividly. Now it is true, you can keep red-eye tree frogs with green anoles if you want, but there are more considerations, and cohabiting different species is a big deal and a big commitment, and something that you can't just do all willy-nilly, or you shouldn't anyway. Now these are a smaller type, they're actually a leaf frog, not a tree frog, even though they're called that, but neither here nor there. The difference isn't super important for this video. These animals are amazing. I have 4 of them. I love them. I've got 2 males, 2 females. I would love to try to breed them someday. I got to see these guys in the wild in Costa Rica, where they're from. They're from Central America. So they like it warm and they like it humid. Just as an anecdote, right? Just take advice from care sheets. But as an anecdote, when I was in Costa Rica, seeing these guys in real life, literally hours after I landed, they're everywhere. It was 28 degrees in the middle of the night and 100% humidity. And during the day, it was 30-something degrees. This is Celsius, by the way. I don't care. I'm doing Celsius today and probably putting Fahrenheit right here. During the day, it's 30-something degrees, say 31, 32 degrees Celsius, and 75 to 80% humidity. They like it warm. They like it humid. So if I did what this guy told me and just put them in this enclosure with no lighting and no supplemental heat in a house that would be 40% humidity or less in the winter because the furnace would be running, that animal would be dead, like, very quickly. Now, these are still great pets. Don't get me wrong, and I think that you could have it as your first frog. It's just, there's a little bit more care involved than what I was told or what we were told in the 2000s. Now keep in mind, these animals are nocturnal, right? The lizards we talked about before, anoles, green anoles, they're diurnal. So out during the day, these frogs are out during the night. So if you want an animal you can see during the day, these are not the best frogs for you. Maybe think about dart frogs or something like that. They're insectivores. They're pretty easy to take care of. They're small. As long as you keep the humidity and the heat where they need to be, they're probably gonna live their full natural life. Just overall amazing animals. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, something I get requested to talk about on the channel so much, Fireskinks. For good reason. Fireskinks are awesome. I personally have a different favorite skink, Schneider skinks, but these are not popular now. They were never popular, so let's just go with Fireskinks. These animals used to be everywhere. I would see these guys in PetSmarts. There's a Petland was a brand here in Canada. They were basically everywhere, and every reptile shop in between would have these. Now, they're a medium-sized animal, so not quite as big as a blue tongue, a little bit bigger than a Schneider skink. They're from West Africa. They like it humid. They like it pretty warm. They're a burrowing type species, or they'll take advantage of burrows if you give them the option. But then when you walk into a pet store back in the 2000s, you would see them on like reptile carpet with nowhere to go, looking super stressed out. And they got a reputation as being bitey and flighty. But if you take care of them properly, they're not. I am very lucky. I've got a Discord channel. I would love if you joined. There's a link in the description. We talk about reptiles. It's the biggest reptile Discord that there is. Love it. And there are some Fireskink freaks on there, and I say that in the most loving way. These people know so much about Fireskinks. It's all they talk about, and I love it. I've learned so much from these people, and all of them have very handleable Fireskinks, which changed my mind about skinks in the first place. Because growing up in the 2000s, even though I do this for a living now, I was thinking, oh, well, skinks, most of them are flighty and bitey. Most of them aren't handleable animals. They might as well get in an anole. And I was wrong. And I learned that because of the Discord, but also because we have better information on the internet now, and you can speak to people like that on platforms that did not exist in the 2000s. Because think about it, you are a PetSmart employee in 2005, and the internet is in its infancy. You can't really look up much. There is no care guide for Fireskinks. They come in farmed, probably sick, full of parasites, dying half the time. You're setting them up improperly, giving them nowhere to hide. They're super stressed out. Of course you're gonna tell people that they're flighty and be careful, you're not gonna be able to handle them, and that's just not the case. So I don't know why you don't see them more often now. They're amazing pets, but I mean, that's why they didn't do so well in the 2000s for a lot of people. Number 2, something we've talked about a little bit, and usually negatively, Savannah monitors. Now, I have a personal anecdote with Savannah monitors. I used to live with one of my buddies, and he had a Savannah monitor named Lucifer. Perfect name for the Savannah monitor. He kept it in way too small of an enclosure because that's how he was told to take care of it. It had a water feature, it had very little substrate, it wasn't near warm enough. It just was not the right way to keep a Savannah monitor. And this thing was nasty. Nasty. He eventually got rid of it, but it was very small for its size. It wasn't fed properly because what I remember reading the website that he learned how to take care of this thing from, and it was like feed it chicken hearts and that's it. And you can't just do that. Savannah monitors have a pretty varied diet. They like it way too hot. Like by too hot, I mean hotter than most things. If you kept most animals the way you keep a Savannah monitor, they would perish very quickly. But I remember sticking my hand in there on the basking spot and like it was lukewarm. These guys like it so warm, it would be a shock to you. It wouldn't burn you, but it would be like, holy cow, this is really warm. These guys are carnivores. They'll eat all sorts of different things, including chicken hearts, but not exclusively. You'll have liver issues with your animal if you feed them just that. Savannah monitors have had a reputation of being nasty because we didn't know how to take care of them. They're still cheap, but they were wicked cheap back in the day. PetSmart go find one for 45 bucks all day long. That's Canadian. So what's that? 13 cents American, right? So these guys were just easy to acquire. They were farmed, brought in from Africa, full of parasites. These guys were nasty because they weren't being taken care of properly, and they were mostly wild caught or farmed, which is very similar anyway. Where now, there's a little bit of captive breeding going on. It's still not super common, but at least we know how to take care of them better. And we know to take them to a vet to get them checked out. The problem is with a $45 animal to go to a $300 vet appointment, well, here in Canada. If you guys knew how expensive it was to live here, it is wild. To walk into a reptile vet sometimes is like hundreds of dollars before anything is done. Regardless, I'm just saying that it's more expensive the day that you get it to take it to someone to look at than to actually buy it. And to set up an animal that is going to get 4 feet long in an enclosure that needs to be, say, 8 foot by 4 foot, something like that, most people aren't going to do that. And that is a problem. Because if you have an unhappy animal and a sick animal, it's going to be a nasty animal. And it's a really good thing that we don't see these guys in PetSmarts anymore. At least I haven't seen one in years. And hopefully you haven't either. They can make great pets, but they are a specialty reptile. Not one for everybody, not one for the masses, someone who really is dedicated to taking care of a very clever, very smart, and very specialized creature like a Savannah Monitor. And that leaves us with number 1, something you probably have never heard of, unless you walked around pet stores in the 2000s, emerald swifts. We would see these everywhere. I remember them. They're beautiful, brilliantly colored. They have an iridescent sheen to them. They're from the cloud forest in Central America, so they like it a little bit cooler, which made them hardier because a lot of these same things, yeah, keep it at room temperature or put like a little halogen light on it and it would get up to 75 degrees. Well, that's perfect for an emerald swift. It's gonna kill a lot of other things, but regardless, these are not a handleable animal most of the time. They're pretty skittish. They're not that big, 7 inches, something like that. They're very fast and they don't want anything to do with you in terms of handling most of the time. Now there's gonna be exceptions. I'm sure someone's gonna put in the comments, oh, well, my teacher's grandma's dog's brother had one and it was him. Yeah, okay, well, this is not par for the course. This is pretty special. Now, if you're looking for a type of animal that's something that you're not gonna handle and you want it to be like a showstopper when people see it, this is a great option. They're beautiful, they're amazing. They have not the longest lifespans. They're not very big. I mean, the diet's pretty easy. The care is pretty easy. But in general, emerald swifts aren't the best pets for most people. And most people who are shopping in big chain pet stores aren't diehard reptile people. They'll find a reptile shop or look online or whatever. I think in reptile, this is my own personal opinion. Feel free to disagree in the comments. I think in pet shops, big brand pet shops, PetSmart is the example we've been using, you should have things that are really easy to find information for, hardy animals, and you should have people working there that know how to direct you to take care of them. I am pretty dead set on this. Don't keep Burmese pythons and tegus in big brand pet stores. These are not animals for people who are walking through and like, Dada, give me that reptile. Like, that's not who these animals are for. So there you go. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Please hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. And in the comment section, what do you want to see next week? I get all the ideas for the videos from the comment section, so have your say. And a special thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys get discounts on the merch. You know what extra projects I'm doing. I'm gonna post about the trip. I've got a trip coming up. Anyway, I can't wait to drop it. It's only gonna be on Patreon until we actually leave in the fall. For as little as $1 a month, you get all that and more. Thanks again, Patreon. And because we do videos on Mondays and Thursdays, that means I'll see you in the next one.